All right. Happy Sabbath. Grace and peace to you all. Love seeing the Lord's house filled with his people. Jumping back into the series I've been doing on understanding the Bible. Surprise. This is going to be a part one of 1 Samuel. There is a lot of material in the book of 1 Samuel. There's a lot of material in here, so I'm going to be splitting it up. As I said in part one of this series, to boil down what this is about, 1 Samuel is essentially about how Israel got a king. All right, so that's the 10,000 foot view of this book. Yes, I'm like trying to do an overview of this stuff. It's hard to not zoom in on some of it because there's so much meaty stuff in here. Again, in part one, I went over, this is our English breakup of the Bible, 66 books of our English edition of the Bible. And in the Hebrew Old Testament, we have it divided into 39 books, and there's 27 books in the New Testament. As I've gone over the years, our English Old Testament, while it's 39 books, it's considered 24 books in the Hebrew edition, or even back to a point when it was 22 books, but it's still the same all material. So in the Hebrew canon, they look at it as the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, because remember, I explained before, the Tanakh, it's an acronym from Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Okay, so there's the 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then there's 8 books of the prophets. Now this may be surprising because, let me flip back there to the English one, because we looked at this as the books of the law, and then the books of history, and we have Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuels, 1st Kings, 2nd Kings, Chronicles, and we have then there's a book of histories, and then we have the poetry, then we have the major prophets and the minor prophets. But in the Hebrew canon, this book we're delving into today is one of the 8 books of the Nevi'im, of the prophets. And you notice it's just Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, Isaiah, because what we know as 1st and 2nd Samuel were one scroll in the Hebrew canon. When it was translated into Greek, what we know is the Septuagint, they broke up Samuel into 2 parts. And in our English edition, we followed that order. I am breaking it up further because, as I said, there is a lot of material in 1 Samuel. So Samuel's in of the prophets because Samuel is a prophet. What's a prophet? 1 Samuel 3:20, all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of Jehovah, a prophet of the Lord. 1 Chronicles 9:22, all these which were chosen to be porters in the gates for 212, he says, these were reckoned by the genealogy of the villages whom David and who? Samuel the seer did ordain in their set office. As it explains in this book as well, there was a time when the prophets were known as seers because this is what God did. He gave them vision to understand. They were known as seers. Samuel was one of them. So the time scale of this book covers essentially like 1100 to 1000 BC, thereabouts. And it's essentially, it's the last judge through the first king. And a little bit of, well, this is what we're going to get to today. We're going to get into the second king in the next part. This, as we know, came on the heel of the book of Judges. Now, I know we just did the book of Ruth last, but because Ruth is in the time era of the Judges, fairly early on in the Judges. But the book of Judges, we saw its key theme, because it was leading us to where we're coming to today with 1 Samuel, that in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Now we know God had rose up judges, and they were kind of like localized leaders. So there wasn't like a unified nation of Israel under them. And that's why it keeps repeating. People are doing what's right in their own eyes. And for the most part, we saw it was the sin cycle happening over and over again. We had the great hope of a great light in the book of Ruth, seeing a nice handful of righteous people during that era. But we also, in the book of Judges, saw a great darkness, Israel apostatizing over and over and deeper and deeper. And that brings us up to the time of Samuel, and eventually into the time period of the kings. So as I went over in the first part, 1 Samuel is Israel demands a king who turns out to be a disappointment. It's not quite what they were hoping it would be. It tells the story of Israel's change from a theocracy, which is a country run by God, to a monarchy, a country led by human royalty. Samuel was the last of Israel's judges. He did try to appoint his son as judges, as we'll get into, but they were rejected as they should have been. The author of this book is traditionally Samuel, Nathan, and Gad, because we see in 1 Chronicles 29:29, the acts of David the king, first and last, behold, they are written in the book of Samuel the seer, in the book of Nathan the prophet, and the book of Gad the seer. And that they're writings that chronicled the life and times of David, and leading up to that were collated into what we know as Samuel, the book of Samuel. Key verses in here. 1 Samuel 8:6-7. The thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. Samuel prayed unto Jehovah, and the Lord said unto Samuel, listen to the voice of the people in all that they say unto you. They have not rejected you. They've rejected me, that I should not reign over them. 1 Samuel 13:13-14, Samuel said unto Saul, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now would the Lord establish your kingdom upon Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be captain over his people, because you have not kept that which the Lord commanded you. And 1 Samuel 15:22-23, Samuel said, has the Lord his great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For rebellion is the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness as is iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also has rejected you from being king. All right. These things all preach. There is much preaching in this book, again, where I had to cut it in half today, because there's so much in here for us to learn life lessons from. All right. Samuel is from the Hebrew Shemuel, which means heard of God, like Shema, hear, O Israel. Shema, O Israel. Heard of God, because a few things in here. When his mother prayed, she was heard of God and received her son. And we'll see Samuel heard God calling him as a young lad. All right. So essentially, you can break up Samuel into three parts. 1 Samuel here. Chapters 1-7 is essentially the stories of Eli and Samuel. You guys familiar who Eli was a high priest with his sons. And then chapters 8-15 is the stories of Samuel and Saul. And then from 16 to the end of it at 31, it's Saul and David and what's all going on with them. A little bit breaking this down. So in that first part, we'll see about Hannah's answered prayer, the judgment for Eli's family, the ark lost and restored, Ebenezer, God has helped us. And then Samuel and Saul, we see how Israel asked for a king. Saul is chosen and confirmed. Samuel will hand over authority, because remember, he was the last reigning judge. He hands over authority to Saul, but Saul, we'll see, ultimately fails to measure up. And then in the next part, which we won't be delving into today, David chosen, Saul's rejected, David's triumphs, Saul's jealousy, God's man on the run, David, David's duplicity, Saul's desperation, and David defeats the Amalekites, and ultimately Saul ends his life there on the hill. All right. So we'll be looking over this the next couple of weeks here. So going into part 1, chapter 1, with Hannah and her story. There was a certain man of Ramathim, Zophim, of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah. He was the son of Jehoram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephrathite, or some translations will say an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh, because at this point in time, this is where they came, Shiloh. There wasn't, they had not gained Jerusalem, and this is where the Lord's name was. The 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were the priests of the Lord, and they were there. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions, but unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, because he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb, and her adversary provoked her sore, meaning her sister wife there, Peninnah. She had provoked her sore to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, she went up to the house of the Lord, and she provoked her, and Hannah wept and didn't eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why are you crying? Why aren't you eating? Why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after they ate in Shiloh, and after they drank. Eli the priest was upon the seat of the post by the temple of the Lord, and she was in bitterness of soul, and she prayed to the Lord, and she wept sore, and she vowed a vow. She said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your handmaid and remember me, and not forget your handmaid, and you will give unto your handmaid a man-child, I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. So she so desperately desired to have a son. And so she made a vow to God, God, if you bless me with a son, if you open my womb and give me a child, I will give him back to you. And she offered as a Nazirite vow, I will raise him as a Nazirite. I won't have no razor come upon his head, and I will turn him back to you. Her vow is, it's so heartwarming, and in the one way it's her heart's desire, but even in that heart's desire, she's willing to take and hand it back to God. You bless me with the son. You think about these things that you pray for, things that you want so dearly in life. When the Lord blesses you with them, do you put them into service to him, or do you put it into service to yourself? You say, oh, thanks, and you run off, and you got this gift, and you forget about the giver. And you don't use that gift to glorify him. I'm saying this book preaches. It came to pass as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli marked her mouth, and Hannah spoke in her heart, but her lips moved. So she wasn't speaking out loud. She's there and she's praying. And Eli, the priest, is looking at her like, what's this drunk woman doing here? He's like, how long are you going to be sitting there be drunk? What do you put away your wine? And Hannah's like, no, my Lord, I'm a woman of sorrowful spirit. I haven't drinking wine or strong drink. I'm pouring out my soul before the Lord. Don't count your handmaid for a daughter of Belial. Out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken there. Saying, don't think I'm wicked. I'm sitting here drunk. I'm not like daughter of Belial. I'm not that person. I'm pouring my heart before God because my grief. And Eli answered and said, go in peace. The God of Israel grant you your petition that you have asked of him. She said, let your handmaid find grace in your sight. And so she went away and ate, and her countenance was no more sad. So here she pours out her heart to God. She makes this vow. And you see her faith in this. As she hears, she sees Eli, the high priest, hears it and receives it and accepts it and says, go, may the Lord bless you in this. And her countenance changes. And she's no more sad. She hasn't received yet. But her faith that God will follow through. So she went her way and ate and drank, and countenance was no more sad. And they rose up in the morning and worshiped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house in Ramah. Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And it came to pass when the time was come about after Hannah conceived, that she bore a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked him of the Lord. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. But Hannah didn't go up, for she said to her husband, I'm not going to go up until the child's weaned. And then I'll bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. So Elkanah, her husband, said, you do what seems good. You stay until you weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode and gave her son suck until she weaned him. And when she weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks, 1 ephah of flour, and a bottle of wine. She brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. The child was young. They slew the bullock, brought the child to Eli. She said, my Lord, as my soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman that stood here by you praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has given me a petition what I asked of him. Therefore have I lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he should be lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Again, you think on these things, this life lesson of this woman whose heart's desire was to bear a son unto her husband, to give him back to God. So you've and she's been made full. Even before she received him, she's made full. And so it brings us to Hannah's prayer in the chapter 2, where Hannah prays and says, my heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over my enemy because I rejoice in your salvation. There's none as holy as the Lord. There is none beside you, nor is there any rock like our God. Talk no more exceedingly proud. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the bows of the mighty men are broken. They that stumbled are girded with strength, and they that were hungry ceased. So that the barren has borne 7, and she that has many children is waxed feeble. The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and brings up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and lifts up. He raises up the poor out of the dust and lifts up the beggar from the dunghill, to set them among princes, to make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. He will keep the feet of his saints. And the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for by strength shall no man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. The Lord shall judge the ends of the earth. He shall give strength unto his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed. So in here, we see God opposes the proud and exalts the humble. And that despite human evil, God is at work. We saw that even like in the book of Judges. This is a theme we see throughout the scriptures. Despite our wickedness, in the things that we do, God is still at work, working out our redemption through his anointed. God will raise up a messianic king, and he has. He's raised up our Redeemer. So Eli and his sons definitely were wicked men. Eli or Lee was not the best of fathers in what he did. He was a little too lenient and would not address his son's sins seriously enough. The sons of Eli were scoundrels who had no respect for the Lord. This is the NLT version here. So those following along with the KJV, this is the NLT here. The sons of Eli were scoundrels who had no respect for the Lord or their duties as priest. Whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, Eli's sons would send over a servant with a three-pronged fork. And while the meat of the sacrifice animal was still boiling, the servant would stick his fork in the pot and demand that whatever it brought up to be given to Eli's sons. So people are making offerings. They're preparing the offering for God, and Phinehas sends over, and Hophni sends over their servant, go stick a fork in there and take that up and bring that meat back to us. They were taking the Lord's offerings to themselves. Granted, as priest, they should have got a portion, but they weren't following what the Torah of Moses required of them. So all the Israelites who came to the worship at Shiloh were treated this way. Sometimes the servant would come even before the animal's fat had been burned on the altar. He would demand raw meat before it was boiled so they could be used for roasting. I want to roast it. Take that out of there. I'm taking it. And the man was offering sacrifice might say, hey, take as much as you want, but the fat has to be burned. And the servant would say, no, you give it to me now. I'll take it by force. So the sin of these young men was very serious in the Lord's sight. They treated the Lord's offering with contempt. But Samuel, though he was only a boy, served the Lord. He wore a linen garment like that of the priest. And each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. So she still gets to see him. She comes up yearly to bring up the sacrifice with her husband, and she's still bringing gifts unto her son that she gave to the Lord. But so they're contrasting here Eli's sons and Samuel, because Samuel was right there with him. He's raising that household, but look how different Samuel is being. A lot of times you have that problem in a household. If the older ones are having a bad example, they'll often be lead the younger ones into issues. But in this case, as Samuel had been set aside, his heart was different than theirs. He said, so they're there and they make sacrifice, and before they return home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, may the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one that she gave to the Lord. And the Lord blessed Hannah, and she conceived, and she gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. I like the way that it's stated there. It's not that he grew up in a distant house of Eli, or he grew up in the presence of the Lord. Now, Eli was very old, but he was aware of what his sons were doing to the people of Israel. So could he claim, hey, I didn't know? No, he knew. He knew what his sons were doing. As priest, that they were being wicked and robbing God and robbing the people. And not only that, he knew, for instance, that his sons were seducing the young women who assisted at the entrance of the tabernacle. The King James, I forgot how it words it in there, but it says the priests were fornicating with the women at the tabernacle. Yeah. Eli said to them, I've been hearing reports from all the people about the wicked things you are doing. Why do you keep sinning? You must stop, my sons. The reports I hear among the Lord's people are not good. If someone sins against another person, God can mediate for the guilty party, but if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede? But Eli's sons wouldn't listen to their father. The Lord was already planning to put them to death. You know, it's a hard thing as a parent. You know, you hit a point, and especially is obviously these men were of age to be priests. And so you go to that point from being a commander of your family to being a counselor of your family. And it's a hard point to try to reach your kids and say, this is the way the Lord says to walk. The decision's up there, you know. So I can have compassion on Eli on the one hand. Yes, on the one hand, he's speaking, but I also believe God when he says that things Eli was doing wasn't right. It wasn't enough, you know. So one day a man of God came to Eli and gave him this message from the Lord. He said, I've revealed myself to your ancestors when they were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt. I chose your ancestor, Aaron, from among all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to offer sacrifices on my altar, to burn incense, and to wear the priestly vestments he served me. And I assigned the sacrificial offerings to you, priest. Why do you scorn my sacrifices and offerings? Why do you give your sons more honor than you give me? You and they have become fat from the best offerings of my people Israel. Again, this preaches. Could God be telling you this as well? Why do you give your children more honor than you give me? We read through this book about how he gives Samuel a word, and Samuel was steadfast to it. God gives us word as well. Are we steadfast? I think of that as my own self as a father. Am I steadfast in delivering the things that God's delivered to me to my own children? As there are times when I'm being an Eli. Said this, we got to let this preach to us. Therefore, the Lord, the God of Israel, says, I promised your branch of the tribe of Levi would always be my priest, but I will honor those who honor me, and I will despise those who think lightly of me. The time is coming when I'll put an end to your family, and will no longer serve as my priest. All the members of your family will die before their time. None will reach old age. You will watch with envy as I pour out prosperity on the people of Israel, but no members of your family will ever live out their days. The few not cut off from serving at my altar will survive, but only so their eyes can go blind and their hearts break, and their children will die a violent death. And to prove what I've said will come true, I will cause your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, to die on the same day. Then I will raise up a faithful priest who will serve me and do what I desire. I will establish his family, and they will be priests to my anointed kings forever. Then all your surviving family will bow before him, begging for money and food. Please, they'll say, give us jobs among the priests so we'll have enough to eat. You notice in here that God's already saying they're going to have kings? And remember, this is prophesied back in Deuteronomy through Moses the prophet. That they're going to come a time they're going to ask for king, and got to have them king. Give them a king. So Samuel, the child, ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open vision. There was no prophets amongst them. They had the word written aforetime of Moses and Joshua. And it came to pass at that time when Eli was laid down in this place, and his eyes began to wax dim, so he couldn't see. And the lamp of God went out in the temple of the Lord. Remember, he had the light that was supposed to be ever lit. And so Eli's laid down, and the lamp went out where the ark was. And Samuel laid down to sleep, and the Lord called Samuel. And he answered and said, here I am. And he ran to Eli. He said, here I am. You called me. And Eli said, I didn't call you. Go lay down. And so he went and laid down, and the Lord called him again, Samuel. And Samuel got up and went back to Eli and said, I'm here. You called me. I didn't call you, my son. Go lay down. And Samuel did not yet know the Lord, nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. Like Samuel was not yet a prophet, a seer. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time, and he arose and went to Eli. Here I am. You did call me. And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. So Eli said to Samuel, go lay down, and it'll be if he calls you, you'll say, speak, Lord. Your servant hears. So Samuel went and laid down in his place, and the Lord came and stood and called at the other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel answered, speak, for your servant hears. And the Lord said to Samuel, behold, I will do a thing in Israel at which both the ears of everyone that hears it shall tingle. In that day I will perform it against Eli, all the things which I have spoken concerning his house. When I begin, I will also make an end. For I have told him I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons have made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. See, I'm saying with God's judgment. We can sit there and read in the previous chapter. We can read Eli saying, hey, sons, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing this. But God's saying, Eli fell short. He didn't stop his sons from doing this. He could have done something more. And again, there's a point in time, if you remember back even throughout the Torah, there's a point in time when words cease to work, stones work. Right? He says, I have sworn to the house of Israel, the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice, nor offering forever. And Samuel lay in mourning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and Samuel feared to show Eli the vision. Because, of course, if you're Eli, and you keep having Samuel come to you, hey, what, you call me? No, hey, it must be the Lord. When he calls you again, find out, aren't you going to ask in the morning, hey, so what does the Lord want? What was the Lord calling you for? Samuel didn't want to say, because he wants to kill you. Yeah. So Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. And he said, here I am. He said, what's the thing the Lord said to you? I pray, don't hide it from me. God will do to you more also if you hide anything from me, all the things that he said to you. So he's putting a little pressure on him. Oh, may God do to you what he said's going to do if you don't tell me. Oh, okay, I'll tell you. So Samuel told him every whit and hid nothing from him. And he said, it is the Lord, let him do what seems him good. What a response. And I'm sure he knew my house has been wicked, but look where my sons are. Yes, they're priests, but look what they're doing. God's right in his judgment. Samuel grew and the Lord was with him and did let none of his words fall to the ground. That's what I'm saying with Samuel. Do we let any of God's words fall to the ground when he's given them to us? There are things that we're letting drop through our fingers. Are the things that we're not being bold in speaking, in doing. All Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be the prophet of the Lord, and the Lord appeared again in Shiloh. For the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. Because remember, through much of the book of the Judges, the Lord's not really speaking with Israel. And here he is now revealing himself time and again with Samuel. So if you remember in the book of Judges, we had issues with various enemies who were pushing on Israel, and one of the biggest enemies in there was the Philistines, and the Philistines were still here an issue here at the time of Samuel. So the word of the Lord came, the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Israel went out against the Philistines to battle, and they pitched beside Ebenezer, which will come up a few chapters later. And the Philistines pitched in Hoeck, and the Philistines put themselves in array against Israel. When they joined the battle, Israel was smitten before the Philistines, and they slew of the army in the field about 4,000 men. When the people were coming to the camp, the elders of Israel said, why has the Lord smitten us today before the Philistines? Hey, let us get the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of Shiloh. And when it comes along, it'll save us out of the hands of our enemies. Were they right? No, they were putting their trust in a created thing, not in the Creator. Let's go get that thing he told us to create and put out in war. When Joshua went out and put it in front of them, they won. Let's go get that. They put their trust in the thing. Yeah, it was like their new Hushtan of the day. It'll save us. It may save us out of the hand of our enemies. So the people sent to Shiloh, and they brought from thence the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, which dwells between the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. And when the ark of the covenant of God came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout. The earth rang. Yeah! We're going to beat these Philistines. We got the ark. And the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, and they said, what means this noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And then they understood the ark of the Lord would come into the camp, and the Philistines were afraid. Oh, there's that thing that they use in battle. That thing made them win. They're having the same misgivings that Israel had. And they said, God is coming to the camp. And they said, woe unto us. There's not been anything there heretofore. Woe unto us. Who's going to deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness. Be strong and quit yourselves like men, O Philistines, that you be not servants to the Hebrews as they've been to you. Quit yourselves like men and fight. And the Philistines fought, and Israel was smitten. And they fled every man to his tent. And there was a very great slaughter. There fell of Israel 30,000 footmen, and the ark of God was taken. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. What did God say was going to happen to Hophni? In the same day. So they're thinking this ark's going to save them. They get slaughtered, and the ark gets taken. And their two priests get killed. And then there ran a man of Benjamin out of the camp. They came to Shiloh that same day with his clothes torn and dust upon his head, earth upon his head, it says. He was deeply cut by what just happened. And when he came, he said, lo, and Eli was upon a seat by the wayside watching. His heart trembled for the ark of God. He was concerned. They took the ark. My sons are out there. What's going to happen? And when Eli heard the noise of, he says, then the man came to the city and told it, and all the city cried out. And Eli heard the noise of crying. He said, what means this noise of tumult? And the man came in hastily and told Eli. Eli was 98 years old. His eyes were dim, and he could not see. And the man said to Eli, I am he that came out of the army. I fled today out of the army. He said, what's done there, my son? The messenger answered and said, Israel has fled before the Philistines. There has been a great slaughter among the people, and your two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, they're dead, and the ark of God is taken. And it came to pass when he made mention of the ark of God that Eli fell off his seat backwards by the saddle gate and broke his neck, and he died because he was old man and heavy. Why was he old and heavy? Because his sons were stealing all the meat. And he had judged Israel for 40 years. His daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, she was with child. She was near to be delivered. So she's 9 months pregnant. She gets word, hey, your husband's dead. And your father-in-law's dead. And you're, And so she hears the tidings that the ark of God was taken and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead. And she bowed herself and travailed. And birth pains came upon her. And about the time her death, the woman stood by her and said, fear not, you have borne a son. But she answered not and didn't regard it. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, the glory is departed from Israel. The ark of God is taken. And because her father-in-law and her husband, You said the glory is departed from Israel. The ark of God is taken. So in this day, not only were Hophni and Phinehas killed, but then their father and then Phinehas, his wife, all died at the news that the ark was taken and that the glory of God had departed Israel. So the Philistines took the ark and they brought it from Ebenezer unto Ashdod. And this is this is definitely some interesting story. What happens when they grab the ark? They brought it to their temple, to the house of Dagon, and they set it by Dagon. And when they rose up early in the morning, Dagon was falling on his face to the ground before the ark of God. So they put it in front of Dagon, the statue of Dagon, and Dagon's dropped over on his face to the ark. And his head and the palms of his hands were snapped off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Therefore, the priest of Dagon, or any that came to Dagon's house, they don't tread on the threshold. They therefore neither the priest of Dagon nor any that come to the house of Dagon tread on the threshold of Dagon of Ashdod unto this day. But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon Ashdod, and he destroyed them and smote them with hemorrhoids. And even Ashdod and the coast thereof. And when the men of Ashdod saw it was so, they said, the ark of God of Israel shall not abide with us. His hand is sore upon us. And when Dagon our God, and upon Dagon our God, and they sent and gathered all the lords of Philistine to them and said, what should we do with the ark of God of Israel? And they said, let the ark of the God of Israel be carried unto Gath. And they carried the ark of the God of Israel there. And it was so that they carried it, that the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction. And he smote the men of the city, both small and great, and they had hemorrhoids in their secret parts. Therefore, they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And it came to pass that the ark of God came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out and said, why have you brought the ark of God of Israel to us, to slay us and our people? And they sent and gathered together all the lords of Philistines and said, send away the ark of God of Israel and let it go down to its own place, that it doesn't kill us and our people. There was deadly destruction throughout all the city. The hand of God was very heavy there. And the men that didn't die were smitten with hemorrhoids. And the cry of the city went up to heaven. So on the one hand, while the ark wasn't an item that Israel should place their trust in for salvation, it was still something that God, it was tied with the name or the renown of God, and he was still defending this thing that was tied with him and coming against those who stole it, as it were. Let's see, what was that? Chapter 5. Yeah, so they get the ark back. Chapter 6, they bring it back. We won't delve too much into that. Chapter 7, Ebenezer. The men of Kirjath-jearim came, and they fetched up the ark of the Lord, and they brought it to the house of Abinadab up in the hill, and they sanctified Eleazar his son to keep the ark of the Lord. And it came to pass that while the ark abode in Kirjath-jearim, that the time was long, for it was 20 years. And all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. So they brought this ark back there. They set it up. They sanctify Eleazar, because remember, Hophni and Phinehas and Eli, those three priests are all dead, and they sanctify Eleazar to serve at the altar and at the ark. And 20 years go by, and Samuel speaks to the house of Israel, because now here's Israel lamenting after the Lord. And he says to them, if you do return to the Lord with all your hearts, put away the strange gods and Ashtaroth from you, and prepare your hearts unto the Lord, and serve him only, he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. And the children of Israel put away Baalim and Ashtaroth, and serve the Lord only. And Samuel said, gather all Israel to Mizpeh, and I will pray for you unto the Lord. And they gathered together to the Mizpah, and drew water, and poured it out before the Lord, and fasted on that day. And there it was said, we have sinned against the Lord And Samuel judged the children of Israel in Mizpah. So there comes a point of a national repentance here after being plagued by the Philistines for a great time, to the point they had their ark taken. It's brought back, and they still didn't have national repentance at that point, 20 years, and they're like, man, we've done wrong. And so Samuel speaks to them of these things, and gather them at Mizpah. And when the Philistines had heard the children of Israel were gathered at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And the children of Israel heard it. They were afraid of the Philistines, but the children of Israel said to Samuel, don't stop praying for us. Don't cease crying out to the Lord for us, that he will save us out of the hand of the Philistines. So Samuel took a young lamb, offered it for burnt offering, holy to the Lord, and Samuel cried to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord heard him. And as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to battle against Israel. But the Lord thundered with a great thunder that day on the Philistines and discomfited them, and they were smitten before Israel. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and smote them till they came under Beth-kar. And Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen and called the name of it Ebenezer, saying, hitherto has the Lord helped us. Ebenezer is the stone of help. Yep. Yes. Yeah, I'm sure a bunch of you are thinking of the song. Yes. So the Philistines were subdued, and they came no more to the house of Israel. The hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. And the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel. From Ekron even to Gath, and the coast thereof did Israel deliver out of the hands of the Philistines, and there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life, and he went from year to year and circuited to Bethel, Gilgal, Mizpah, and judged Israel in all those places. And his return was to Ramah, for there was his house, and there he judged Israel, and there he built an altar unto the Lord. So from here we say into the story of Samuel and Saul, because this is where they decide to reject Samuel's sons and desire a king. So it came to pass in chapter 8, Samuel was old, and he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second, Abiah, and they were judges in Beersheba. But his sons walked not in his ways. They turned aside after money. They took bribes. They perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel in Ramah and said to him, you're old, and your sons aren't walking in your ways. Make us a king to judge us. Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, listen to the voice of the people and all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, they've rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works that they have done since the day I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so are they doing unto you. Again, we get in this as we're reading through all these books. Are we seeing this story? I mean, this is God's story. This is the story of reality, of what occurred. And he's saying, this is what's been happening since the day I took them out as servants in Egypt. This has been continually happening. What you're seeing them, what you felt they're doing to you, rejecting you, this has been my life with them, Samuel. 1 Samuel, continue in chapter 8. Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked him of him a king. And he said, this will be the manner the king shall reign over you. He will take your sons, appoint them for himself, for his chariots, to be his horsemen, shall run before his chariots. He will appoint him captains over thousands, captains over 50s, and will set them with their ear to the ground and to reap his harvest. He will make his instruments of war, to instruments of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be confectionaries, to be cooks, to be bakers. He will take of your fields, your vineyards, your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. He will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. He will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men, your donkeys, and put them to work. He will take a tenth of your sheep. You will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king, which you shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel and said, nay, we'll have a king over us, so we could be like the other nations, and that our king may judge us and go up before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, listen to their voice, make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, everyone go to his city. Who is your king? Who is your king? Do you serve the invisible God? Or do you need someone else to say, well, this is the way? Do you look to me or another Bible teacher? Is that for an excuse to be like, well, this is what they said do, and you have some kind of excuse, you think, for not obeying? Why were they looking for this king and not putting their trust in God to be their king? They're looking to other nations and said, let's be like them. The Lord told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came. This is chapter 9. Pick it up in verse 15 here. Tomorrow about this time I will send you a man out of the land of Benjamin, and you will anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I've looked upon my people, because their cries come to me. And when Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said to him, behold the man who I spoke of, this same shall reign over my people. Okay? So people say, we demand a king, we want a king. And Saul, in Hebrew, Shaul, is asked for. That's what his name means. You asked for a king. Well, you have asked for. Here's Shaul. Inquired of, asked for. Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate and said, tell me, I pray you, where the seer's house is, because he is in there and he's looking for the seer. It's this whole matter with these things with the sheep and all this. But Samuel says to Saul, I am the seer. Go up before me to the high place, and you'll eat with me today, and tomorrow I'll let you go, and I'll tell you all that's in your heart. And as for the donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, don't set your mind on them, for they are found. On whom is all the desire of Israel? Is it not on you and on all your father's house? He said, all Israel's crying out for a king. Don't you know this is you? And Saul answered and said, am I not a Benjamite of the smallest of tribes of Israel? My family, the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such things to me? This is we see later that he said he was small in his own eyes. Why would you put me? We're the smallest of tribes, and we're the least of the families of Benjamin. You're going to put me over Israel. But later we see Saul is lifted up. I often point out with people, and when we come into the New Testament, we read about Saul, also known as Paul. That Saul was also of the tribe of Benjamin, as this man here. And that man who was definitely standing in his own flesh and his own righteousness and these things that he later counted dung, when he encountered the Lord Jesus Christ, he became small in his own sight. He had the opposite events of life occur in his life. And Paul, by the way, means small. He became small in his own eyes. The versions at points where it's not the King James, it's been NLT, New Living Translation. So Samuel took a vial of oil, chapter 10, and he poured it on Saul's head. He's anointed him. And he kissed him and said, "Is this not because the Lord has anointed you to be captain over his inheritance? When you departed from me today, then you will find 2 men by Rachel's sepulchre in the border of Benjamin at Zelzah. And they will say to you, the donkeys which you want to seek, they're found. Your father has left care of the donkeys and sorrowing for you, saying, what shall I do for my son? Then you go on forth from thence, and you'll come to the plain of Tabor, and there you'll meet 3 men who are going up to God, to Bethel, and one's carrying 3 kids, the other is carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another one's carrying a bottle of wine. They're going to salute you, and they're going to give you 2 loaves of bread, which you're going to receive in their hands. And then after that, you come to the hill of God. There's going to be a garrison of the Philistines. It shall come to pass when you're coming to the city, and you'll meet the company of prophets coming down from the high place with a psaltery and a tabret and a pipe and a harp before them, and they will prophesy. And then the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you shall prophesy with them, and shall be turned into another man. So here's Samuel the seer prophesying to Saul. I'm going to tell you all these events. You're going to see all this stuff occur, and then the Spirit of God's going to come upon you. You're going to prophesy along with the prophets, and God's going to turn you into another man. And let it be, when these signs shall come upon you, that you do occasion serve thee, as you do occasion serve thee, and for God is with you. You shall go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down to you and offer burnt offerings and to sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days shall you tarry till I come to you and show you what you shall do. And it was so that when he had turned his back from Samuel, God gave him another heart, and all those signs came to pass that day. So when they came there to the hill, behold, the company of prophets met him. The Spirit of God came upon him. He prophesied among them. And it came to pass when all that knew him before time saw it, behold, they prophesied among the prophets. And the people said, what is this that's come upon the son of Kish? Talking about Saul. Is Saul also among the prophets? And one of the same place answered and said, but who is their father? Therefore it became a proverb, is Saul among the prophets, also among the prophets. So God was working with Saul. He had every opportunity to have Israel be spoken of as the great house of Saul. You know, we talk about the house of David and how that led. He had every opportunity. God poured out his Spirit on him and was renewing his hearts and renewing him on the inner man. Yet he fell. Now, this is some pretty scary words of Scripture here. Right? It's a great warning to us if we'll take heed, because the same thing occurs within the Christian. God pours his Spirit on us and turns us into another man. He gives us another heart. But as we know, it's not once saved, always saved. People can still fall. And we see that here with Saul of Benjamin. So Samuel called all the people together unto the Lord at Mizpah and said to the children of Israel, thus says the Lord God of Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt, and delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, out of the hand of all kingdoms, and of them that oppressed you. And you have this day rejected your God, who himself saved you out of all your adversities and all your tribulations. And you said to him, nay, set a king over us. Now therefore present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your thousands. So, as we read previously, when that Lord came, or the word of the Lord came to Samuel, he didn't just let it drop to the ground. So he's telling him, hey, I'm giving you what you asked for, but realize I'm telling you at the same point, while you're getting this king, and God's giving you this king, it's because you've rejected him as king. He's the one who's delivered you. He delivered you out of Egypt. He delivered you out of every kingdom, and you've rejected him. Line up, guys, because we're going to bring Saul in here, and we're going to anoint him, and he's going to be your king. But realize what you've chosen. So Nahash the Ammonite comes up, chapter 11, and encamped against Jabesh Gilead. And all the men of Jabesh said unto Nahash, make a covenant with us, and we'll serve you. And Nahash the Ammonite answered them, on this condition I'll make a covenant with you, that I might thrust out all your right eyes and lay it for reproach upon all Israel. They're afraid. The Ammonites are there, and they're going to, well, hey, we'll make a peace accord with you. Okay, yeah, let me cut out your right eyes, every one of you. So you'd be a reproach. And the elders of Jabesh said, give us 7 days respite, and we may send messengers to all the coast of Israel. And if there's no one to save us, we'll come out to you. And so the messengers of Gibeah were sent to Saul and told the tidings in the ears of all the people. And all the people lifted their voices and wept. And behold, Saul came after the herd out of the field. And Saul said, what is ailing the people that they weep? And they told him the tidings of the men of Jabesh. And the Spirit of God came upon Saul when he heard those tidings, and his anger was kindled greatly. So here's an example of righteous anger. The Spirit of God came on him when he's hearing what's happening to God's people. And he took a yoke of oxen, he hewed them in pieces, and sent them throughout all the coast of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying, whoever doesn't come and follow me in Samuel to go fight these Ammonites, same thing's going to happen to you that happened to these oxen. Well, guess what? A lot of people didn't have to be drafted from there. Okay, I'm there. The fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. He numbered them in Bezek, and the children of Israel were 300,000 men. The men of Judah were 30,000. And they said unto the messengers that came, let's say you to the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow by that time the sun will be hot, you'll have help. The messengers came up, showed it to the men of Jabesh, and they were glad. And therefore the men of Jabesh said, tomorrow we'll come out to you, and you shall do with us all that seems good to you. And so it was on the morrow that Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came in the midst of the host of the morning watch and slew the Ammonites unto the heat of day. And it came to pass that which remained were scattered, so that 2 of them were not left together. And the people said to Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men that we may put them to death. And Saul said, there be not a man put to death this day, for today the Lord has wrought salvation in Israel. And then said Samuel to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there. And so Samuel, all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. And there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before the Lord. And there Saul and the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Remember, Gilgal is the place when Joshua entered the promised land and circumcised all the children of Israel from the wilderness who had not been circumcised, and they were circumcised at Gilgal right before they partook of the Passover entering that year in the land. And so he's bringing it back here to establish the new kingship in Israel here at Gilgal. Samuel said to all Israel, behold, I have hearkened unto your voice, and all that you said to me, I have made a king over you. And behold, now the king walks before you. I am old and gray-headed, and behold, my sons are with you. I have walked before you from my childhood to this day. And then he goes into a series of saying, have I misdone anybody? Have I taken of you and not done, and they're all like, no, you have no blood on your hands. There's nothing you've done wrong. And so here he hands over the kingdom to Saul here in chapter 12. Pick it up in verse 6. Samuel said to the people, it is the Lord that has advanced Moses and Aaron, that brought your fathers up out of the land of Egypt. Now therefore stand still, that I may reason with you before the Lord of all the righteous acts of the Lord, which he did to you and your fathers. When Jacob was come out of Egypt, and your fathers cried to the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, which brought forth your fathers out of Egypt, and he made them dwell in this place. And then, when they forgot the Lord their God, he sold them to the hand of Sisera, the captain of the host of Hazor, and unto the hand of the Philistines, and unto the hand of the king of Moab, and they fought against them. And they cried unto the Lord and said, we have sinned because we have forsaken the Lord, and we serve Baalim and Ashtaroth. But now deliver us out of the hand of our enemies, and we'll serve you. And the Lord sent Zerubbabel, and Bedan, and Jephthah, and Samuel, and delivered you out of the hands of your enemies on every side, and you dwelled safe. And when you saw that Nahash, the king of the children of Ammon, came against you, you said unto me, no, but a king shall reign over us, when the Lord your God was your king. Now, therefore, behold the king whom you've chosen, whom you desired. And behold, the Lord has set a king over you. If you will fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then shall both you and also the king that reigns over you continue following the Lord your God. But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandments of the Lord, and shall the hand of the Lord be against you, as it was against your fathers. So he rehearsed to them, let's go back and look at this. Look what the Lord's done. Look what the Lord's done. And look what you people did over and over, and how merciful and gracious and long-suffering he's been. And yet, here today, you've rejected him, and you chose a king. Here's your king. So, chapter 13, Saul reigned 1 year, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. Saul chose him 3,000 men of Israel, whereof 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash in Mount Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. And the rest of the people he sent every man to his tent. And Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Gibeah, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. All Israel heard say that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines. I thought it was Jonathan, but Saul gets credit, I guess. In Israel also we have heard in the abomination of the Philistines, and the people were called together after Saul to Gilgal. And the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen. And the people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came up and pitched in Michmash, eastward from Bet Havan. And when the people of Israel saw that they were in a strait, the people were distressed. Then the people did hide themselves in caves and thickets and rocks and high places and pits. And some of the Hebrews went over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul, he was yet in Gilgal, and all people followed him trembling. And he tarried 7 days, according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. Remember, we just read about that. And Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And Saul said, bring here a burnt offering to me and peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute him. And Samuel said, what have you done? And Saul said, I saw the people were scattered from me, and you didn't come within the days that you said you would. And the Philistines are gathered themselves together at Michmash. So I said, the Philistines will come down now upon me at Gilgal, and I haven't made supplication to the Lord. So I forced myself, therefore, to offer a burnt offering. I didn't want to do it, but I had no other choice. And Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now would the Lord establish your kingdom upon Israel forever, but now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be captain over his people, because you have not kept that which the Lord commanded you. Again, this should preach to us loudly. We'll continue here in the story because Saul's still thinking he's right. What do you mean? I kept the commandment. I did. Look, I gave him his offering. Yeah. Samuel said to the Lord has sent me to anoint you to be king over his people, over Israel. Hearken unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, and how he laid wait for him, and when he came up to Egypt. Now go smite Amalek, utterly destroy all that he has, all that they have, and spare them not. Kill both man, women, infant, suckling, ox, sheep, camel, ass. And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen, 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said to the Kenites, go, depart, get you down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. And you showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. And then Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah till you come to Shur, which is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatlings, and the lambs. All that was good, they would not utterly destroy them. But everything that was vile and refuse, they destroyed utterly. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, it repents me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from following me, and has not performed my commandments, and it grieved Samuel. And he cried to the Lord all night. So Samuel said to Saul, the Lord has sent me to anoint you to be king over his people, over Israel. Now you listen to the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he wait for him in the way, and when he came up from Egypt, you go smite Amalek and destroy all that they have, and spare them not, and slay both man and women, infant, suckling, ox, sheep, camel, and ass. I have this one in here twice. I do have this one in here twice. All right. Yeah, it is good stuff. But so Samuel was grieved, and again, it's a hard place to be a prophet. It's a hard place to have the word of the Lord, and you have to deliver it to the people, and to be straight. You know, especially in this generation, I'd say that a lot of people don't really like confrontation. We're very much in a hey, live and let die type of a world, but we need to be bold and not let the word of the Lord drop to the ground. Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, and it was told Samuel, saying, Samuel came to Carmel, and behold, he set him up a place, and has gone about, and it passed on, and gone down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, blessed are you of the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. Samuel said, what's this bleating of the sheep in my ears then? And the lowing of oxen? What do you mean you obeyed the commandment of the Lord? Why am I hearing ba ba and moo? What's going on? What do you mean? And Saul says, well, they brought them from the Amalekites. The people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God. The rest we have utterly destroyed. So notice, the people have done this, and the rest we utterly destroyed. So he includes himself in the destruction, but the saving is the people. Samuel said to Saul, you stay, I'll tell you what the Lord has said to me this night. And he said, say on. Samuel said, when you were little in your own sight, were you not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed you king over Israel. The Lord sent you on a journey, and he said, go utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, fight against them until they be consumed. Why didn't you obey the voice of the Lord? Why didn't you fly upon the spoil and did evil in the sight of the Lord? You didn't go and just wipe them up. You took this for yourself. You did evil. And Saul says, well, I've obeyed the voice of the Lord. I've gone the way that the Lord said to me. I've brought back Agag, the king of Amalekite, and I've utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people, does this preach to you? I do such and such for God. I've done it. I've kept his commandments, but yeah? What's this bleating the sheep I hear in my ears? You're fooling yourself. The people took the spoil, the sheep, the oxen, the chief of the things that should have been utterly destroyed. He knows. He took it to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. Do you think that you can sit there and say something that God has told you to put out or to get rid of or to destroy, that you can now take of that same thing and say it's a gift to God and that he'll accept it? Think that through. Spend some time chewing on that concept and think about areas of your life where you might be Saul in it. All right? He says, yeah. Samuel says, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Rebelliousness is the sin of witchcraft, and the stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. What would you, as a parent, want from your kids? Would you want your kids to simply obey you, or would you prefer they disobey you and then give you some gift because they disobeyed you? What would you prefer? What do you have greater? What's that? Well, that's God does still take gifts. Even they're not they're they're not always gifts due to sin, but yes. But he's saying, look, God prefers obedience. Don't think that he's satisfied just with you saying, well, here's a covering. Here's a gift I gave you because I disobeyed you. Let me make up to it. Let me give you flowers because I was a jerk or whatever. Right? God does not have delight in that. Not as a great delight as obeying. Yes, he set up a system for there was a covering, and he gave us the greatest covering. But he doesn't want us to rely on sacrifices or disobedience and say, this is the way, and I've kept God's commandment while I'm doing this, and well, I did this and I gained that so I can give you something, and I did this wrong thing, so maybe I can use this illicit gain I got to help those people over there, or maybe I can. God is not pleased with such things. It's the sin of witchcraft, like the sin of witchcraft, stubbornness as iniquity and idolatry. Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and your words. Because Samuel told him, this is what you're going to do. You abide 7 days, I'm going to come there. He says, and because I feared the people, and I obeyed their voice. That's often what happens in this walk. Especially, I was going to say on the one hand, especially amongst the youth, but you know what? The whole concept of peer pressure continues through life. For some reason, people fear other people, and they want to somehow get along and appear like, hey, I'm right with you, and do things they normally wouldn't do of and by themselves. But for some reason, people in a group get really stupid and very sinful. And so people fear the people, and they sin and transgress the commandment of the Lord. That's why it's very important that you have due diligence to recognize who are the Lord's people, who are on the Lord's side, and those are the people that you walk among and who walk among you. He says, I pray, pardon my sin and turn it again with me, that I may worship the Lord. And Samuel said to Saul, I'm not going to return with you. You've rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord's rejected you from being king over Israel. And Samuel turned about to go away, and Saul laid hold upon the skirt of his mantle, and it tore. And Samuel said unto him, the Lord has rent the kingdom from Israel from you this day, and has given it to the neighbor of thine, and who is better than you. Ouch. Ouch. God's taken this from you today, and he's given it to someone who's better than you are. Well, Saul needed some humbling. All right. And he says, the strength of Israel, God, will not lie or repent. He's not a man who should repent. Saul said, hey, I have sinned. Yet honor me, I pray, before the elders of my people and before Israel, and turn again with me, that I may worship the Lord your God. So Samuel turned again with Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord. And then said Samuel, bring you here Agag, the king of the Amalekites, bring him to me. And Agag came unto him delicately. And Agag says, surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hewed Agag in pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel no more came came no more to see Saul to the day of his death. Nevertheless, Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord repented that he had made Saul king over Israel. So that'll be the end of our reading for today. We will pick up in the next part with chapter 16, coming to the stories of Saul and David. And we'll be reading more about more of the kings and those who had a heart for God and those who did not, which is more the majority. All right, but that's it for today. Again, I hope it's been edification for y'all. God bless and keep you.